Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Welcome to Dreamville's Echoes of a Dream broadcast. My name is Andre. I am your host. And this is actually likely going to be our last show. If you've been sticking around for us, you know that I've been gone on hiatus a little bit. But I have not been stopping on the project. I'm still working on the graphic novel. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, you're probably wondering, what is Welcome to Dreamville? Well, I'm a graphic novelist, which means I do comic book illustration, and I'm working on a graphic novel about the early days of Tom Petty and the music scene of Gainesville, Florida. And so along the way through this project, we've had quite a few people join us. We've had Marty Gerard, we had Jason Hedges, we've had other musicians and artists who have kind of followed along the path of, whether musically similar to what Tom Petty's done or just in their own right as artists and musicians. So it slowed down a little bit, but there's for good reason. We are coming up to the end of this graphic novel. I've been illustrating it now since last, and the book is looking good. We're about 20, 30 pages away. So pretty soon we'll be focusing a lot more on those works, and hopefully you'll have a lot more cool things to enjoy. If you are joining us for the first time, make sure that you check out the Welcome to Dreamville Facebook group. That's where I'm posting all sorts of updates, illustrations, news about what I'm working on. And for our, final episode, I wanted to bring on somebody pretty special. He is a musician extraordinaire. He has played with a lot of different people, but he is also well known for his time on Mudcrutch, and his name is Charlie Souza. So Charlie, thank you for joining us. Come on in and, hello.
Hey, how are you, Andre? This is great. I love it.
So you're coming at us from Tampa, right?
Well, no, actually, I'm in Northwest St. Petersburg.
Okay.
Petersburg. Pinellas County.
Okay.
I'm a St. Petersburg native. I was born in Tampa, but, we used to play, our band used to play on the beach out at Madeira Beach. And so,
cool.
after being in California for 28 years, I just had to come back home to St. Petersburg,
So St. Petersburg was where you grew up and lived and raised?
Tampa and St. Petersburg. I kind of lived on the Gandy Bridge, back and forth.
Oh yeah, man, I know that bridge very well. So Charlie, tell us a little bit about yourself. We know that you're a musician. We know you've played with people like Greg Allman and obviously Tom Petty, and you've played through a variety of different musical groups. But tell us a little bit about really who is Charlie Souza and when did he get started playing music?
Well, I'll start at the beginning. My mother was a piano player, and so I heard music while I was in the womb. So I was born with the piano playing, all of this 40s music and 50s music. And so I learned how to play piano very early, when I was like 4 or 5. And then in grade school, I joined the orchestra and started playing clarinet. And that was, I don't know, it was a little while ago,
Clarinet, really? So what made you do the clarinet?
Well, I was in the orchestra at school. Okay. And of course, they want you to read the music and play all the parts. And I began to kind of jam my parts and not watch the music, just play by ear. And of course, the director didn't like that, but that's why he put me. I was first chair clarinet. Now they moved me to third chair clarinet because I was a jammer, And then, of course, then I made the move. I think 64 is when I first heard the Beatles on the radio. And I had been strumming guitar and playing Peter, Paul, and Mary and stuff like that. And so we started the band straight away, my buddy and I, Tim, on MacDill Air Force Base. And it just grew ever since then in 64. And then the Tropics, which was a horn band at the time, they had, sax and trumpet, and they needed a bass player. So I had to put my guitar down and pick up a bass and learn, the old funky R&B tunes. And I joined the Tropics, I guess, late '64.
Okay.
And we had a pretty good run up until
So
'69.
like an R&B band? Is that what it is? Like, what kind of music?
Well, no, it started out R&B, but we turned it into the Beatle band. We wore matching suits, and we bowed like the Beatles, and we had great managers. We had Margie Sexton, and her husband Dick was our managers, and she just got us to do all kinds of things. We were copying, doing steps like Parver and the Raiders, and we were doing Parver and the Raiders sets and James Brown set. We do the I Feel Good with the cape and all that, and we had a
version of like a boy band really back then, right? Like you were doing like matching moves, like an NSYNC or Backstreet Boy band.
Yeah, we wore matching clothes and all that, and striped pants and just crazy stuff. And we did our Beatles set with our pinstripe suits and our ties, So we had a good run, like I said. Went to Chicago in '66 and won an international battle of the bands, and signed with Columbia Records, and our first record got a 92 on American Bandstand, and we were like almost there. It was really great. We were like big time in Florida and the Southeast, and we went up to New York to record for Columbia, and that's where I met Aretha Franklin. She was in the next room. Yeah, she was something. I'd watch her sing, and it's like, wait a minute, and I'm going to do my little "Take the Time to Call My Name," Anyway,
right there, coming after that must have been a hard act to follow.
Yeah. Anyway, in the mid '60s is kind of when I ran into Tom. Must have been when we were playing Gainesville a lot, 65-ish.
How old were you at the time?
How old was I?
Yeah, back in the '60s when you were part of the Tropics. How young were you?
Geez. I must have been 17. And
touring with the band, going up to Chicago, meeting Aretha Franklin, all that around your teens?
Yeah, I bought a house when I was 19. It's like, we're stacking.
My first house, I was 29, man. 19.
Well, this was really weird because like I said, our managers got us jobs. We were working all year long and come home, put a stack of $100 bills on the dresser and not know what to do with it. And, yeah, Tom
don't leave home now till they're like in their 30s, and here you are, 19, owning your own house. But
yeah,
that seems like a pretty big accomplishment at 19. You say you almost made it, but it sounds like you
made it. Yeah, we were doing real well. At 20, I was cruising and trading in my GTO for a Grand Prix, and then I got a convertible Impala, and those were the days. And I was getting ready to say. It was like 65. We played a lot in Dreamville. We played all of the fraternity parties and the couple of clubs up there. And, it was like a great place to be because of the college people. They were all crazy and drunk and just had partying all the time. And that's when I met Tom. He came into one of the clubs we were playing, and he was standing in front of me watching. And he must have been 13 or 14. I don't know. I know I'm 2 or 3 years.
Do you remember the name of the club?
I don't remember the name of the club.
No. Yeah, a lot of those clubs got lost in time. A lot of the players are not even there anymore. But
a lot of us bass players get lost in time.
So you met Tom. What was he a memorable experience meeting Tom for the first time?
Well, it was, we just said hello and that was it. I tell you though, when it came to be 1975, it was a whole different story as far as meeting Tom. That's like a decade later, meanwhile, I had been playing with the Tropics, and then Bacchus. We had a good little 3-piece Jimi Hendrix style band for 4 or 5 years there in Bacchus, and that's when Greg Allman came down to get his bass player, and he picked me, and because Barry Oakley had died from that motorcycle accident, and so I went up to New York. Actually, first I went to Macon with Greg, and he was getting married the next day, and it was like a crazy world. He sat me down in front of his tape recorder in his living room, and he said, "Here, write a song." And I'm going, right, okay. How do you turn this thing on? And anyway, we went to New York, and he was doing the Laid Back album, and we're sitting in the studio there listening to these New York horn section. It was just blew my mind. And a couple of the Allman Brothers came in, and things really didn't work out there because Greg was kind of acting weird with, having women in the hotel room and the drugs and all that stuff. So it kind of freaked me out. And luckily, I got a call from the drummer from Captain Beyond, Bobby Caldwell, who was doing a stint with Cactus. So I went from New York to Long Island and joined Cactus, and we toured, I don't know, almost a year with, we doubled with the Bob Seger band, and I met the bunch of Bob Seger people. And then I came back home and recorded the second White Witch album in '74. And we went down to Criteria in Miami.
Florida, right? Yeah.
And Ron and Howie Albert were the producers for White Witch. There's the guys that did the Eric Clapton stuff, Layla and all that. So
it was really, you had like a choice being in Florida. Like you could go up to Macon and record there, or you could go down to Florida and record at Criteria.
Well, Capricorn Records sent us down to Miami at Criteria, and came back up and did a few White Witch gigs and concerts, and then my father, who I hadn't seen since I was 7 years old, came down to visit me, and he was staying with me, and I got this little record in the mail. It was called Depot Street. And I put it on the record player and turned it up real loud, and my dad said, "Turn that stuff down." It was like it was a whole life change right there, because Tom then called me and he says, "We're looking for a bass player." And I go, "Well, let's try this out." Let me take a sip of water.
Yeah, before we get too quick to Tom, I have a couple of questions about the days before, jumping.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So you played with the Allman Brother, with Greg. You went up to New York. You were in, all these different places, but you're a Florida boy. Through and through, originally you're a Florida boy. So tell me a little bit about what that travel was like. Being in the '60s, discovering a band. Suddenly you feel like you're getting your own Beatles moment, getting outside of Gainesville. Not Gainesville, I'm sorry, you were down in St. Pete, but getting outside of Florida. I mean, what was that experience like? The first time you realized, wow, I can do something with this music outside of my hometown.
Well, yeah, the very first feeling that I had was after we had won that contest up in Chicago. We went on the big station there, I believe it was WLS. And they interviewed us, and it was like they drove us around in a limo, and there were like kids chasing us in the street. And right then and there, it's like I had watched the Beatles movies, and I thought, damn, I'm in a Beatles movie. That was like one of the biggest thrills of my career. There's so many, I've been thrilled and blessed my whole life. But that was a good time, that Chicago experience. And then, well, we came back, the Tropics came back to Florida, and we played all the teen towns all over the state. And just like we did before we won the contest, it was like, well, we were going to move to New York City, and we never did. So that's when, everything got weird, and we started playing Jimi Hendrix music, and that's when Bacchus started up. And Bacchus had a pretty good run.
We looked at Bacchus there for a minute. Oh no, I was looking at hold on, I don't have a Bacchus picture. No, I don't. Sorry. But
okay.
Back when you played, obviously so much changed in music in the 60s and 70s. So much experimentation, so much diversity, a lot more than I would say today. Did you ever feel like you were pinpointed into anything? Like, did you feel like you yourself were, could you label yourself as any type of musician? Because you did play so much, and your variety is pretty wide stretching. Would back in the day, would Seven Charlie said, yeah, rocker, or would you say, yeah, I can do R&B, and I can do rock, and I can do big band, and I can do, step? Well, I mean, were you versatile your own right?
Well, yeah, I enjoyed playing all types of music, and I think that's a part of, who I was at the time. I'd play every style that came to me, and whatever band I was in, whatever the guys in the band wanted to do, I was always I was the bass player, so I just put the bottom on to whatever everybody wanted to do, and it was the Beatles. It was the Stones, it was James Brown, it was all of the 60s music. I mean, I loved Herman's Hermits and the Zombies and, all that English influence music that came over then. We were all captured by that and wanted to be like them. And but when it comes down to it, yeah, I'm just a combination of all the different types of music I've been playing, including R&B. I mean, I'm heavy into R&B. I just, I grew up with R&B. So yeah, it's, of course, you've got a picture up now where we were playing Jimi Hendrix a lot. And that's when Greg Allman came to get me. And that's my little gold mushroom pendant around my neck there.
Oh, cool. So when you mentioned earlier, Dad told you to turn off that Depot Street album. Tell me, was your dad not a huge fan of the music scene that you were getting involved in? Did he think that it was?
No, he didn't have a clue. He was just from another world. He was a retired Air Force sergeant. And he moved away when I was a kid. So I never knew him until he came down when I was, 26 years old. And that's when Tom sent me the record. So he was just with me for a couple of days. So
yeah, I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
But finally he left, and I turned the Depot Street record up to 10,
All right, so tell us the story. You got called up by Tom. You were living in Florida, and he said, hey, Charlie, come out west. We want you to play our band. It was shortly after, I believe, Danny Roberts left, and I had a chance to talk with Danny. Great guy. Didn't get him on the show. Would have loved to have done that. But I think he's busy doing 100 other things. But you got the call. Tell us what happened.
Well, I got a story about Danny later, but I said, sure. So Tom sent me a plane ticket. And I was out at LAX, and a couple of weeks later, and Tom had this little blue Opel sports car he picked me up in. I mean, it was very memorable. And so we're riding over I've got a lot of things in my book that I've written about this, so I'm just going to read this section. I didn't have the communication skills to a point where I could make myself clear about my own feelings. And most of my music friends were kind of in the same boat. And my new friend, Tom, kind of was too, because when he picked me up with my bass guitar at LAX, I knew then we were both running down a dream. But while narrating our ride over the 405 and over the big hill, Tom called it, it was hard to figure out what he wanted me to do besides play bass. And of course, I'm coming from a songwriter's perspective too. So I thought, oh, great, we can do a couple of my tunes. And, well, it didn't really work out that way, but we rehearsed and went over all the tunes that he had then. And it sounded great. And he said, you're in the band. And then we went over to Shelter. And that's where I'm sitting on the steps there in that picture at Shelter. And I met Denny Cordell. And I think Leon came through the hallway and said, boo. But Denny Cordell asked me if I have my machine with me. And I said, what? In a British accent, you got your machine with you? And I go, what? And he goes, your bass guitar. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I was in the band at that point, and it felt great. And I flew back to Tampa, and another week later, the Mud Crutch equipment truck stopped by my apartment, and Jim Linehan and a couple of other guys helped me load all of my furniture into the equipment truck. And I had moved out, and my wife and I jumped in my little Carmen Ghia and put the black cat in the back seat, and we followed the equipment truck across the country. We had to stop in Baton Rouge, pick up Benmont, because he was at school there. And then we headed straight up to Tulsa, Oklahoma, with the equipment truck and my little kitty cat in the car, and my wife with it was, I don't know. It was really, oh, by the way, it's the first time I drank Coors beer, because when we got out that far, that they had Coors beer out there.
They didn't have Coors beer in Florida at the time?
Well, now they do, but back then it was like the West.
Right?
Yeah. So anyway, we ended up recording in Leon Russell's house in Tulsa. In the basement, he had a 40-track studio, and it just blew my mind. And we'd go in and we'd record a song or two. We'd come back in the control room and we'd all light up cigarettes and, hey, what do you think? You like that? Yeah. We were like kids. It was crazy.
It's cool. It was
sorry I keep coughing, but
no, it's totally fine. So let me do a little talking in between here. So you mentioned earlier how you were kind of taught, showmanship when you were in the tropics, as far as being not just a musician, but you were being a performer. Obviously some of that was pretty memorable to the Heartbreakers. So tell us a little bit about that experience of bringing your showmanship to the Heartbreaker.
While we were in Tulsa, we played with Asleep at the Wheel was the band. They had violins, and we played a concert with them. And we were playing all the songs, and I'm like moving back and forth because I don't know any better. I was taught to move back and forth, to the feel of the music, because that's just everybody else stood still,
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of didn't fit in the show because I was dancing around, and I ripped my pants standing in front of Benmont Tench playing keyboards. And that's all Benmont talked about after that is I'm the guy that ripped his pants. And
but you kept playing, right? You didn't stop. I mean, obviously.
I didn't stop. I just didn't turn around. So that was a trip.
You came as a songwriter when you first got there, and Brother in the Sky. What about Brother in the Sky? Tell us about that.
Well, I didn't try to push myself until we moved out to Encino, California, where Leon had a mansion with a recording studio, and I think Tom and a couple of guys stayed there at the house, and we'd record at that studio. And I brought my little song in that I had. Well, I had a couple of songs, you know, and I thought, well, hey, let's do one of my songs, Tom, and it's called Here I Go Again, How I Wonder When Will I See You, My Brother in the Sky. And so it didn't really work out. I think Tom was so focused on his tunes that it just didn't, you know, I shouldn't have ever tried that. I should have just sat there and played bass to whatever he was playing on the piano, which is what I did. Don't Do Me Like That. It was like he was just doing on the piano, den, 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 and I came in and I went boom, boom, you know, with my bass. And so that's how the song ended up coming out that way. So moments like that were magic. I played a little bit of, you know, after being trained on woodwinds, kind of, I had an alto sax with me. So I kind of honked on that a little bit. And so I told Tom, let me play this sax part on Hometown Blues. Mm-hmm. And it was just a simple little dun, 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 you know, in harmony, 3 sax parts. And he kept it on the record when the Heartbreakers first record came out with Hometown Blues on it. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, but that was you.
Yeah. Anyway, after the Encino studio thing, 3 or 4 months, I went into the studio one day and Tom said, well, we're not going to have a band anymore and I'm going to do my solo trip. And so that's when I, you know, went back, and I'm like 2 or 3 months later driving my little Carmen Ghia around in Hollywood. Well, my wife worked at the Starwood nightclub, and I heard my little sax part coming out of the Carmen Ghia speaker. It was like, wait a minute, that's me, you know. That was another moment in time, you know. There's these little nuggets that you'll never forget. So I'd be going to the Starwood and hanging out and watching the bands, and that's where I saw, oh God, what's that band? The guitar player just died. There's a lot of bands like that.
Unfortunately, when you say that guitar player just died, it's like, wait.
Yeah. The Starwood, they had Van Halen was playing there for beer, you know.
Right.
So that I kind of was hanging out there, and I lived up in an attic of somebody's apartment. It was like really weird on Hollywood and Vine, and I was really getting into the Hollywood thing. And I'm walking up the street in West Hollywood one afternoon, and here comes Tom walking down the street. And I had my little tape recorder in the garage, you know, and I said, hey, Tom, why don't you come in my garage and we'll record on my tape recorder? It's like, he just looked at me like I had 2 heads, you know. But that's the last time I saw him in Hollywood. And of course, it took a lot of air out of my balloon to listen to all those hit records and to be sitting in Hollywood going, damn, I could have done that, you know. But I eventually went on to some very interesting projects.
Yeah, I was going to say, for somebody who, I'm echoing, I hear myself really loud. You know, you left the band, or the band broke up, but, you know, other people would have gone back home. You stayed out there, you made something. So 28 years, you know, what was the result of that? Like, what did you do after you left the band?
Well, that's interesting because that's when I went and auditioned for another band. You know, Hollywood, SIR, you know, all these, there was like bands on every corner. Anyway, I've passed the audition for the band called Gale Force, and they were signed to Fantasy Records, and their manager was, oh gosh, you know, they had a really hot manager, and he hooked me up with Wayne Henderson, jazz trombone player in the Jazz Crusaders. And so he was the producer for Gale Force. And we went up to Fantasy Records in Berkeley, recorded a couple of albums. And I've got it in my book. That's, you know, Wayne would always call at the end of the day for some yak and Q. That's cognac and barbecue ribs. And so I really enjoyed that. I thought, because Lenny Gale's voice sounded just like Free and all those top groups back then. There I am way in the back with the yeah, right behind the chick, you know. Anyway, it was about the two brothers, and that was cool with me. That other guy is Rocky Race. He played on Joe Walsh's hit dun, 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 anyway, he was with Joe Walsh. Rocky Mountain Way, he played on that thing. So yeah, I was mixing up with a lot of interesting people, and we'd rehearse at SIR, and here's Stevie Wonder in the next room with all his bands rehearsing while we're working up the album for Gale Force. And it was amazing. I kept waiting for the Gale Force to hit it big, and they didn't. So I joined another band called James Quill Smith Band. He used to play with oh God, I should have had my list out here. John Mayall. He was with John Mayall, and he had his own band. And we played around a lot. So I moved out to the beach in Hermosa, and that's when we got called by Max Gale, the actor.
Okay.
And he was executive producing an album for the Native American actor, Floyd Red Crow Westerman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard the name.
He was in Dances with Wolves.
Right.
And
yeah.
He was Jim Morrison's spirit guide in the Doors movie. And so anyway, Red Crow, Floyd Red Westerman, was doing his own.
Played every Native American role that was there back in the 80s.
So I mean, this man was truly a Native American, and I really got a really deep vibe from him. As far as, you know, Earth is Your Mother, and all of his songs were deep and heavy, and so that was an experience, and I carry that with me, you know, all the time. I've got all my stuff up on our website, and you know, and from that point, we became the backing band for Fred Willard.
Right.
He's a comedian.
Yeah.
You know, James Quill Smith knew a lot of funny guys, I guess, but we played in LA, and we went up to San Francisco at, you know, comedy clubs and stuff. And we went out to Chicago, and somewhere in Detroit we played. And the band would, you know, play a set before Fred would come on. And then Fred would come on and tell some jokes. And so we stood there with our instruments, and our job was to laugh at his jokes. And then he'd like do a song. He'd do a funny song, and we'd play the song with him. And then
like the live studio audience / the in-house.
And then he would tell more jokes, and we would laugh. But that was different when we played the midnight special on ABC. Most memorable thing about that is Randy, well, a famous comedian at the time, came up to me and yelled at my face, "Don't you know who I am?" It was Randy somebody. It was he was a famous comedian. And like that,
not Randy Quaid, was it?
Something like that. It just
like Dennis Quaid's like, brother who's a little weird, but yeah.
Yeah. It was
maybe.
It was the guy that did
you do the vacation movies?
Yeah, I can't think of the guy's name. I'd have to look at my website, but
well, let's talk about the other band that you played in, and that was Fortress, which was heavy metal band.
Yeah. Oh, that was cool. That was right around the same time. I was still touring with Fred Willard.
Mm-hmm.
And right before that, my buddy from the Tropics, the greatest guitar player in the world, Eric Turner. And, he was the guitar player in Bacchus too, when we did all the Jimi Hendrix stuff. So he was like one of the best guitar players I've ever played with. He came out to LA during that time and stayed with me and got adopted into LA. And we got hooked up with a lead singer, Denny Carell.
Okay.
He was a dynamite R&B singer, and we recorded a few tunes in a studio in North Hollywood. It was called Mama Joe's, where the Ambrosia recorded at Mama Joe's, and we met Ambrosia there. And one of the guys that sang background on Ambrosia records, Jim West, started a band with Eric. And then Eric called me, and we called Donnie Vosberg, an incredible double bass drummer that was with the Entertainers down here in Florida. And we put together Fortress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the producer.
That's what it was? It was heavy metal?
Yeah, it was melodic metal.
Okay.
That was basically Eric Turner's influence and musical influence. And the lead singer had a really high, gruff voice, so it fit together quite well. And we went in and we worked up a bunch of tunes, and I threw in a couple of mine, and so I felt like I was part of the band. But basically, it was the lead singer and the guitarist that were Fortress, and I was the bass player, and Donnie Vosberg was an incredible drummer. And we rehearsed, and Freddie Pirro, our producer, brought in a guy from Atlantic Records in our rehearsal room, and we blew the walls out, and they signed us right then and there, without even a demo tape. So we got signed to Atlantic, and we did an album there. It took us a long time because, the producer, Freddie, owned the studio. So the more we stayed in the studio, the more Atlantic Records would pay him for the studio time. And so it was a really groove thing for him. We had a 2-album deal, and I think we got one finished, and it got released, and it did pretty good. I'd go into Tower Records in Hollywood and look under the F's for Fortress, and there they were. Foreigner was in front of us. So Foreigner made it big, and there was Fortress album behind it in Tower Records, But that's kind of the story of Fortress until we kept going. And I think Donnie bailed out, and right then is when we hooked up with Robin Trower's drummer, Bill Lorden.
Okay.
And so Bill played with Sly and the Family Stone and Robin Trower. So we started writing some new songs and doing the Fortress second album prep. And we played a couple of gigs, and we went in and recorded some stuff in the studio, and it didn't go that far. And so that took us into the mid 80s, which is kind of a blur.
For everyone.
Yeah. So eventually, about 5 years ago, Rock Candy Records in England released the Fortress album. So it's available on Rock Candy Records right now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Breathing new life into it decades later, and now it's out.
It's really funny how things happen, because there's a record company in Catalonia, Spain, that just in 2013 and 2018 released a vinyl album of all the old Tropics recordings from the 60s. So we've still got record deals. Right now, I'm working on a Bacchus vinyl release, and I'm always piddling around, with record companies and throwing stuff out there and see if it sticks.
That's what you got to do. Keep hustling it all the way, right?
Oh yeah. And,
well, so Charlie, I always ask every one of my guests towards the end of the show this, knowing, I don't know how much you know about comics or graphic novels or whatnot, but discovering now that there is a graphic adaptation, of, your experience in and around Tom Petty's orbit and growing up in Florida and being a musician, what's one thing that you hope to see captivated in a book like Welcome to Dreamville?
Oh, wow.
Like, what would be the one thing you'd want, like, that book to really do?
Well, I can remember playing at a fraternity party, and everybody's wild. All the college kids are wild, and the girls were running around with their underwear on outside of their jeans. That would be a funny scene.
So explain this to me. So they would take their underwear and they would put it over their jeans.
They must have had them off before, but that's another silly thing that stuck with me. You asked, and that's
you also caught one of your amps on fire, right? Back in one of those.
Well, yeah, that's when Bacchus played up there. I had a double stack of Aztec or Altec or some kind of amps. They were 18-inch speakers, and I was like blowing the Jimi Hendrix music, and flames were coming out of the 18-inch speaker cabinets. It was like, wait a minute, what was I smoking that night? I don't know.
It's like that, what is it, Mad Max Fury Road movie where they have that bass guitarist just kind of hanging on the back, and he's got a flamethrower out of his, guitar. So maybe somebody saw you burn on your amps and said that's the inspiration right there. So
you never know what those wild fraternity brothers are doing,
So let me, what we're going to do is we're going to segue here. I've got kind of a surprise for you. I got a surprise for everyone who's going to be tuning in on this. But let's, pull up the screen here. This is actually a review of all the pages I've done so far for the Welcome to Dreamville book. So starting with page 1, we go through some of the key illustration shots.
Yeah.
We don't want to share too much because this is obviously just the line art. It's not completed yet.
Right.
I'm showing just different kind of shots, things going on here. Obviously, Don Felder and him teaching Tom how to play.
Oh, yeah.
Here to, I haven't gotten to the Criteria Records shots yet, but, discovering Mike Campbell for the first time. We've got a scene for that. And scoot all the way up here, you can see through all this lists. I even got Denny, and you might have to share that, that Danny Roberts story, but I got Danny Roberts and, Tom Petty getting pulled over by the cops on their first trip out to LA.
Yeah.
And then we go all the way up here, and I still have these pages to finish. I'm close, but I also have right here, where is it? You can see I've got spaces where I haven't even inked it yet. I haven't put in the scenes, but Charlie talked about writing music. I've got a whole section here about what I want to write with you. So these are pages that haven't been actually designed yet, and you can see pencils. But one thing I've done with previous people, such as Marty Gerard, who's been really a great help on telling me a lot of the music history, and I love his website.
Yeah.
What I did with Marty is I had to share with him after the fact one of the illustrations. Let me see if I can find it here. Where is that illustration? It's right about here. I shared this, him and Road Turkey. And obviously Stan Lynch and Marty Gerard playing in Road Turkey. And I sent it to Marty, and he was like, "Oh, I think we need to rework the face a little bit." And he helped me get Stan a little bit better too. But one thing I realized is I haven't done you yet, and I figure while you're on the screen with me, what I want to do is I want to do a little live illustration for people to watch, and we're going to illustrate you. And obviously, since you were such a performer, I went ahead and I kind of started with the loose illustration sketch, little stick figure that I like to draw.
Yeah.
But we're going to literally draw you here now on screen. And so, you're going to get to see what you're going to look like. And maybe you can help me along the way to make sure that I get this illustration sample of you just right. So we'll start here at the head,
Yeah, that looks just like me.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, one thing I like, because you sent me a bunch of pictures of what you look like, and no offense, you are a character. You look really like you were meant for rock back then. So we're gonna have fun with this. Let's get, you got your hair going on here. And don't worry about hurting my feelings. If this doesn't look like you and you're like, "Hey man, that's not what I look like," let me know.
No.
Try and draw you. The nose is always the hard part, getting the nose just right.
No, that looks perfect. The stash, yeah.
Yeah, you got like the kind of like the mutton chop thing going on too, which I love.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
So if you're laughing, I hope you're laughing. This is good so far, right?
Oh, I love it. It's great.
If we get you, okay, let's see. If we do this, I can actually, by closing the gaps. Whoa, that was too much. Put it in here, black here. Okay, I got to make sure I fill in all the gaps if we're going to put. Oh, I see I'm missing a gap somewhere. Must be up here near your. See, I can do this thing where I can fill it with light, with a color.
Oh.
But I think somewhere, it's always like a matter of finding the artwork where your lines aren't connecting. Oh, no, I see where it is. Hold on. Right there. Now it'll work. There we go.
Ah.
And then if I go in here, I can add the mutton chops back in so we don't lose those.
Well, this is cool.
Yeah. So there. You got your face now. And you had a particular style that I noticed that was different from a lot of other people then. I didn't see all that many other, band members with the mutton chop kind of look. So did you curate your style based off of anybody you saw, or, was that something you kind of built around yourself?
No, it just kind of happened. I don't know how. I wanted to shave my chin, and I was too lazy to shave the rest.
I'm going to tell you, guitars are always kind of funky to draw. And I really went through a lot to make sure that I got all the guitars right. So we'll make sure it's a better guitar once we get you in here. But just for the sake of this, we'll go ahead and There you go.
Yeah.
So what made you go back to Florida? You were there for 20 years in LA or 30 years in LA, and then you decided I'm going back to Florida. What brought you back?
Well, in 1992, I had a day job selling computer supplies.
Okay.
And of course, I was in a couple of other bands that we played, the Queen Mary, and I wore a tuxedo. But there was a couple of earthquakes, and the Northridge earthquake in when was it? 94 or 92? Anyway, that scared the hell out of me. The earthquake. It was like, wait a minute, man. I'm not sure I like this California thing or not, because there's this big Andreas fault that's supposed to pop too. So that scared the heck out of me.
Was that your first earthquake experience in 30 years?
Well, that was 94.
It was big enough, is what you mean.
Northridge earthquake. It shook the place we were living in. It turned it into a parallelogram, and they had to rebuild it. They had to move out for. It almost smashed my Jeep. A lot of people died out there in San Fernando Valley, and we had to move to another place for 18 months while they rebuilt our place. And so, yeah, I missed home. I missed the beaches, and of course I wrote this song about that. It's called "Carry Me Back to St. Petersburg." It's got its own Facebook page, that song does.
Oh, yeah? I'll have the link so people can listen to it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's "Carry Me Back to St. Petersburg."
Give us a couple lyrics.
Oh, the lyrics?
Yeah, sing us a little, because you've been singing us some songs all day. So.
Oh, carry me back to St. Petersburg. Oh, I've drifted so far away. I got to go back to that town where the seabirds and pelicans play. Ain't nothing like those boats on the water, bringing the family home. The Sunshine City waits for me. Won't somebody show me the way back to the shores of sweet Tampa Bay? Carry me back to St. Petersburg. Carry me back. And that's the way it goes.
Great. I mean, I've had people come on and sing before, but it's great to hear, that kind of stuff that's very local, and that's what I really loved about a lot of, the songs I heard about early Mudcrutch, is that, the music they played was, in many ways, it was, or maybe a lot of Floridians like to see it this way, but they like to think of it as their music, it's telling us, and sometimes we're so used to music being about New York or LA or the big cities, but it's always great to hear songs that, take you back to your own home.
Well, Tom's got the song, what is it, Dreamville?
Right.
I mean, that hits home with everybody here, My little tune won the City Song Contest in 2009, by the way.
In St. Petersburg?
Yeah, I got the mayor had a contest, and I won first place, and they put me on a big giant stage, Rib Fest, to sing the song, and it was a big deal for a little while until they voted out the mayor and got a new mayor.
I'll tell you secretly, or maybe not so secretly, I love St. Petersburg. I really think it's a great city for music and for art and for everything. So I think it's maybe a little bit of a hidden gem compared to some other cities in Florida, because you always hear about people wanting to go over to Miami or West Palm or something like that. But, Jacksonville is the hot place. Everyone goes there. But I think, St. Petersburg is really great. So, well,
the Tampa Bay area. I mean, you got to include Tampa, Clearwater, right. St. Petersburg, and that's called Tampa Bay. And of course, I happen to have written been a small part of putting together a pictorial history book about Tampa Bay.
Tell us a little bit about your work there. So you did one of the history books I love that they do all over the country.
Yeah.
The image here, and
Well,
Whoop.
I've been keeping up with the Tampa Bay Music Hall since 2008, the Florida Music Hall of Fame, and all that stuff. And so Arcadia Publishing contacted me because I had compiled so much stuff on the website, floridamusichall.com and tampabaymusichall.com, and I've got all the nominees listed, and they thought, well, I'd be a good guy to put together a Tampa Bay Music Roots book. So they contacted me, and I took a couple of years to do it. There's the Outlaws on the cover. And I had a buddy of mine, Keith Wilkins, who had been a historian for a while in, all the heavy metal groups in Tampa. So we put that together, and it's kind of nice. I like it. There's just so many amazing people in Tampa Bay that I learned about while I was doing the book, and everybody who's well known that have been here, like Jim Morrison and Ray Charles, and a lot of my friends. There's people here like Greg Billings and Janelle Sadler.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all played all over the place, but their roots are right here. So I'm really honored to have all these friends here in the Tampa Bay area. I don't think there's another place like it.
Well, hopefully we'll have a chance to, have you represent your town and the music of Florida in this upcoming book. And, I'm going to share the screen now for everybody to see. Here
man.
Our illustration of Charlie. And I even let the amps even on fire too, if you see. So.
That's perfect. That's perfect, man. Yeah, great. That's the guy that Tom called to do it. And of course, when I got to Hollywood, I slicked my hair back and tied it in a ponytail, and I tried to act like a Hollywood guy, but that's who I was. That's great.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm stoked to have you as a part of this project, and thank you so much for joining us today, Charlie. It's been a blast speaking with you. You've kind of bookended this series, and next time we talk, hopefully this book will be out, and you will be able to read it and see if I captivated you right in history. So,
well, I'm sure you'll do a good job because I've looked at all your artwork, man, and the stuff you do is top notch, and this kind of a look at the Gainesville, the Dreamville, Tom Petty's stuff, I'm honored to be a part of it. And what you're doing is like top notch. So I look forward to seeing it, man.
Well, thank you, man. I'm really excited. It's going to be a good thing. And with you in it, it's going to be even better. So,
shucks.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining us on this episode of Echoes of a Dream. Stay tuned to the Welcome to Dreamville Facebook page. We will be posting more there. You will see more of me. You can also watch this video again. We're going to have it there, archive it, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk with Charlie again soon. And until then, have a great weekend and rock on. Take care, everyone.
Rock on, Andre. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right.
And